Name: you were never broken, only asleep. From the very beginning, life teaches us to strive, to compete, to earn our worth. We are praised when we perform, corrected when we deviate, rewarded when we meet expectations. And slowly, silently, a belief begins to form. I must become something more. I must prove I am enough. We take in the voices around us. Parents, teachers, friends, media, they all offer definitions of value. Be smarter, be prettier, be stronger, be useful, be quiet, be normal, be someone. These voices settle into the mind like seeds, and soon they sprout into an internal narrative that never stops speaking. You are not good enough yet. You have to try harder. You should be ashamed of who you are. This voice is not truth, but we believe it. We carry it. We feed it with every comparison, every judgment, every wound. Over time, the inner world becomes heavy. The soul begins to dim. We look in the mirror and see only fragments, flaws, failures, fears. We forget the silence that once held us. We forget the light we once were. In the ancient Vedic tradition, this forgetting is not seen as a flaw. It is part of the play. They call it Lila, the divine drama of remembering and forgetting. In this view, you are not damaged. You are dreaming. You are not broken. You are asleep. What sleeps can awaken. What is covered can be uncovered. What is forgotten can be remembered. Imagine a child who believes the night will never end. The stars seem distant. The dark feels eternal. But the sun has not disappeared. It only waits for the earth to turn. In the same way, your wholeness has not vanished. It simply waits behind the mind's shadow. The mind is a storyteller. It repeats patterns, memories, and false conclusions. It loves control. It fears silence. It does not understand your deeper self. The self, the Atman, needs no approval, no praise, no perfection. It is not made of thoughts or history. It is not your trauma. It is not your ambition. It is the presence behind both. You were whole before the world named you. You were light before you learned fear. You were love before you searched for it. But no one told you. Instead, they told you to chase, to fix, to perform. And in the chase, you forgot the stillness. In the noise, you forgot the song. In the race to become, you forgot how to simply be. The pain you carry is not proof of brokenness. It is the soul's alarm clock. It rings to wake you from a false identity. It rings to remind you, this is not who you are. Have you ever cried for no reason? Felt empty in moments of success? Sensed something missing even when everything seems fine? These are not flaws, they are signals. Pointers to something deeper. Cracks in the illusion. Glimpses through the veil. The world will not encourage your awakening. It thrives on your sleep. Systems of profit, power, and pressure rely on you believing you are never enough. That you must buy, achieve, consume, impress, just to feel momentarily worthy. But even within this dream, there is a doorway, a breath, a pause, a feeling you cannot explain, a softness that calls from somewhere inside. Come back, I am still here. You may ignore it, distract from it, silence it with screens and noise and busyness, but it does not leave, because it is not outside of you. It is you, the real you, the watching, waiting, waking you. Not the version shaped by trauma, not the ego built on performance, but the essence that existed before memory, the one that does not need to be healed, only uncovered. You do not need to become anyone. You only need to stop pretending to be what you're not. The masks are heavy. Let them fall. The walls are thick. Let them crack. The stories are old. Let them fade. Beneath all that noise, there is stillness. Beneath all that striving, there is peace. Beneath all that shame, there is sacredness. You were never broken, you were only asleep. And now something within you is stirring. The process of waking is not loud. It is not a dramatic epiphany or sudden enlightenment. It is subtle, like the soft shift of morning light before the sun fully rises. You begin to notice things you had forgotten how to see. The way trees sway without resistance. The way your breath moves without your control. The way silence speaks louder than any voice. In this noticing, something returns. Not knowledge, remembering. A sense that you once knew all this, but somehow lost it beneath the clutter of thought. The remembering is not mental. It is cellular, soul level. It moves through your being like warmth after winter. At first, it may feel like grief, a sorrow for all the years spent asleep, a sadness for the pain you mistook as identity. But this grief is sacred. It is the breaking of the false shell. It is the pain of a seed cracking open. It is the gateway to truth. You may begin to pull away from things that once consumed you. Social games, constant stimulation, the chase of validation. Not because you are better than them, but because you see through them. They no longer hold the same weight. They no longer feel real. In their place comes something quieter, more honest. A desire not for success, but for alignment. Not for attention, but for authenticity. Not for more, but for meaning. This transition is not always comfortable. The world may not understand. People around you may still be sleeping. They may feel threatened by your clarity. They may call it disconnection or withdrawal. But this is not withdrawal. It is return. A return to your center. A return to your breath. A return to what never left. You may start spending more time in solitude, not out of loneliness, but peace. You may feel drawn to stillness, nature, ancient texts, deep questions. You may find yourself crying without knowing why. Not from sadness, but from a beauty too vast for words. This is awakening, not flashy, not perfect, but real, honest, unfolding in its own time. It is the journey of becoming whole by realizing you were never incomplete. The Vedas describe the self as Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. This is not poetic fluff. It is a description of your original nature, always present, always available, underneath the noise of thought and the fog of trauma. The ego will resist this truth. It will whisper, "You're faking it. You're still broken. You're not doing enough." But slowly, this voice grows quieter, not by force, but by irrelevance. When you no longer feed the illusion, it begins to dissolve. The more you rest in awareness, the more the old stories lose their hold. The shame softens, the guilt loosens, the fear fades. In their place comes clarity, spaciousness, compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. You see your younger self with new eyes, not as weak or foolish, but as innocent, as someone who was simply doing their best in a world that had forgotten what wholeness means. You offer that younger self the love they never received, and in doing so, you heal forward and backward through time. The mind wants answers, but awakening offers presence. The ego wants goals, but awakening offers surrender. The world wants performance, but awakening offers truth. You begin to trust your own rhythm. You stop measuring your progress by external standards. You stop chasing outcomes and begin honoring the process. You walk slower, speak with intention, listen with your whole being. You are not checking out of life. You are finally checking in. You are not escaping. You are arriving. You are not shutting down. You are opening. The awakening is gentle, but it is powerful. It rearranges your entire way of being, not because you force it to, but because truth, once remembered, naturally reshapes everything. And still, the world moves on. Still loud, still fast, still forgetting. But you begin to live from a deeper place, a place beyond reaction, a place untouched by fear, a place where nothing needs to be added or fixed. You are not done. The journey continues, but now you walk with different eyes, eyes that see not what is missing, but what has always been present, eyes that recognize light, even in the darkest places. And with every step, you wake a little more. There comes a moment on this path when you realize healing is not about adding anything to yourself. It's about removing what was never yours, the masks, the roles, the inherited fears, the false narratives you absorbed before you even had words, all the layers built to survive in a world that never saw you clearly. You begin to feel the weight of what you've carried, expectations that didn't come from your soul, shame that was never yours to begin with, generational pain passed down like a ritual, the ache of never being fully met, by others or by yourself. And yet, this recognition is not bitter. It's liberating. Because what can be named can be released. What is seen can be softened. What is brought into light no longer controls you from the shadows. The truth is simple, but rarely spoken. There is nothing inherently wrong with you. There never was. The parts of you that were called too much or not enough were simply misunderstood. The sensitivity that made you retreat was the same depth that could feel the worlds tremble. The silence that made you seem distant was the sacred space you kept inside. You begin to forgive yourself, not for being broken, but for believing you were. For every time you betrayed your own voice to please others. For every time you ignored your intuition because someone said they knew better. For every time you looked outside for validation, when the inner voice was quietly waiting to be heard. This forgiveness is not loud. It doesn't arrive as a triumphant shout. It slips in like evening light through a cracked window. It shows up when you finally exhale after holding your breath for years. It speaks not in grand conclusions, but in gentle truths. You did the best you could, and now you know better. So now you begin again. With each breath, the illusion of being broken begins to dissolve. You remember that pain was not proof of failure. It was part of the learning. That confusion was not weakness. It was the soul seeking clarity. That numbness was not absence. It was protection. You stop fighting with yourself. The inner war quiets. You stop seeing parts of you as enemies, the doubt, the sadness, the fear, and start meeting them as messengers, teachers, echoes of where love was missing, and places where it can now return. Slowly, you shift from control to compassion, from proving to allowing, from fixing to understanding. You stop needing every wound to be gone. You start honoring them as sacred marks of becoming, as evidence of your humanity, as proof that you stayed open, even when it hurt. The awakening deepens, not as a sudden enlightenment, but as a gentle unraveling. You let go of timelines. You let go of comparison. You let go of the rush. You begin to trust life's intelligence, that what unfolds is not always what you want, but often exactly what you need. You realize that peace is not a place you arrive at. It is a presence you return to, again and again, between distractions, beneath the noise, behind every moment. The more you rest in that presence, the less you chase. You no longer need the world to confirm your worth. You no longer wait for approval to feel real. You no longer need to be seen to remember that you exist. Something softer takes root, a grounded confidence that does not shout, but simply is. A love that does not beg, but radiates. A knowing that is not arrogant, but anchored. You stop asking the world for permission to be yourself. You stop editing your truth to make others comfortable. You stop shrinking to fit into stories that no longer serve your becoming. Because you remember now, You were never meant to stay small. You were never meant to be silent. You were never meant to pretend. You were meant to awaken, to stretch into your fullness, to walk in your own rhythm, to love without armor, to speak with clarity, to live without apology. And in that remembering, you begin to reclaim yourself, not as an idea, but as an experience. Not as someone you're becoming, but as someone you already are. Someone you've always been.